to tear down what we built. That's when family stands strong. The land remembers everything. I digitized every family document, birth certificates, deeds, and that 1932 water rights certificate granting absolute discretion over Pine Creek's flow. Maggie confirmed I could legally shut off Willowbrook's water, no permits needed. The power was intoxicating, but heavy as the iron valve itself. I gave Priscilla one last chance at Mel's diner, sliding the certificate across the scratched Formica table. She laughed, calling it a pathetic extortion attempt and vowing to bury me in legal fees. That was her fatal mistake. I assembled a coalition, Maggie for legal armor, Frank for dam mechanics, Betty Clearwater from the Pine Ridge Gazette for media strategy, and hydrologist Tom Sakamoto for environmental credibility. Our plan? Gradually reduce dam flow from 850 to 200 gallons per minute during Willowbrook's Memorial Day regatta, letting physics teach a lesson. When Priscilla's son vandalized my barn, caught on security footage, I had leverage, but she filed harassment charges instead. At her community safety meeting, 23 ranching families, led by Frank, exposed her overreach, sharing stories of my family's community service, volunteer firefighting, 4-H leadership, flood relief. Betty's front-page expose in the Gazette painted me as the defender of heritage, not a villain. Channel 9 News arrived, airing a balanced story confirming my rights. On Regatta Day, with perfect Colorado weather and 200 guests partying, I turned the valve. Boats grounded, docks tilted, and Priscilla's captain's outfit couldn't hide her panic. Confronted with my certificate, she screamed, "What did you do to our lake?" I read aloud, "Absolute discretion over Pine Creek water flow." Deputy Morgan backed me up. He's within his rights. The crowd went silent, hearing only trickling water and scraping bolas. As Priscilla caved, dropping lawsuits, acknowledging my barn's historical status, and agreeing to respect my easements. The lake refilled in 48 hours, but the victory was sweeter than Grandma's apple pie. Priscilla moved back to California, and Frank became HOA president, creating a charter to protect historical properties. Betty and I launched the Pine Ridge Conservation Trust, preserving ranches across Colorado. The Ezra Thornwick Scholarship Fund now trains water rights experts, like Maria Santos from the Rocking S Ranch, studying at Colorado State. My barn became a community hub, hosting historical tours where kids touch Ezra's beams, wide-eyed with wonder. Our case set precedents across the West, empowering ranchers against developers. The Pine Ridge Heritage Festival draws thousands, blending blacksmithing demos with modern skills, raising funds for conservation. Ezra's framed water rights certificate hangs in our trust office, a testament to the land's memory. So, what's your craziest HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Smash subscribe for more underdog victories, served ice cold with a side of justice. Rifling through homestead deeds, I found something that made my heart race. Senior water rights to Pine Creek Dam, dated 1932. Let's pause for a quick lesson because this is where it gets educational. Colorado water law operates on prior appropriation. First in time, first in right. Ezra's 1932 rights were senior, meaning they trumped any later claims, giving my family absolute control over the dam that fed Pine Creek, which just happened to flow straight into Willowbrook's artificial lake. The irony was richer than my neighbor's honey. Their entire $50 million resort, their yachts, docks, lakefront mansions, was built on water legally owned by the very family they were trying to bully. Sitting in Dad's worn chair, the rough wood grain under my fingertips, I realized I held the power to pull the plug on their luxury playground. Priscilla didn't know it yet, but she'd picked a fight with the one rancher who could turn her lake into a mudflat. I could have gone nuclear right then, but I played it smart, giving her chances to back off. Priscilla showed up with her HOA posse, offering to sponsor a barn makeover. Free paint, professional crew, even a newsletter feature. It sounded generous, But here's the catch. Altering the barn would kill its chance at historical protection status, a clever way to strip my legal defenses. I stalled, saying, "Let me research complications," and drove to the Colorado State Archives in Denver. There, with a librarian who knew old buildings better than most architects, I spent 6 hours digging into preservation laws. Here's the deal. Colorado grants interim protection status to structures over 50 years old, freezing modifications for up to 18 months while historical societies evaluate them. I filed an emergency application, complete with photos of Ezra's hand-hewn beams and documentation of the barn's rare mortise and tenon construction. Tita, he state fast-tracked it. Authentic Depression-era barns are rarer than a polite HOA board. When Priscilla's painting crew rolled up, I was waiting with official paperwork. Her face went pale as a winter sky, but she wasn't done fighting. She hired Marcus Blackwood, a hotshot Denver water rights attorney who charged more per hour than I made in a month. His strategy? Challenge my water rights, claiming non-beneficial use, since I hadn't irrigated crops recently. In Colorado, water rights follow a use-it-or-lose-it principle, so I needed proof of continuous use. Enter Maggie Rodriguez, a local attorney tougher than rawhide, who knew water law like a preacher knows scripture. Over coffee at Mel's Diner, she showed me 1950s aerial photos of our irrigation ditches, proving historical use. Then, a jaw-dropper. A 1932 survey map revealed our homestead extended 50 feet into Willowbrook's yacht club property. They'd built their fancy dock on my great-grandfather's land. I hammered no trespassing signs along the true boundary, right through their dock, sparking fury. Priscilla called it harassment, but Deputy Morgan, after reviewing county records, confirmed my property lines. She offered $500,000 for my land, a steal considering it controlled her community's water supply. But I held firm. Priscilla played dirtier. A county inspector slapped a red tag on my barn, declaring it an imminent collapse hazard with a 48-hour demolition order. I called Frank Kowalski, a retired Army engineer who'd helped Dad repair the barn in '98. He provided a structural report proving it could stand another century. Maggie filed an emergency injunction, and Judge Harrison, a former rancher, granted it just as the bulldozers arrived. The diesel engines fell silent, sweeter than church bells. But Priscilla pivoted, claiming the barn had asbestos threatening groundwater. That's when I climbed into the says. Barn's loft, finding Ezra's 1943 journal, its leather binding warm with pipe tobacco scent. One entry hit like a thunderbolt. Built this barn for my grandson's grandchildren. Someday, men will try, in a dry creek bed. This isn't just a tale of sweet revenge, it's a masterclass in Colorado water law, historical preservation, and standing tall against bureaucratic bullies. If you've ever faced an overzealous HOA, nosy neighbors, or corporate transplants trying to rewrite your town's story, this one's for you. Hit that like button, grab a coffee, and settle in for a roller coaster of suspense, strategy, and hard-won justice. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. I'd bet your town's got its own HOA nightmares. Let's dive in. The story begins with my great-grandfather, Ezra Thornwick, a man carved from the same rugged pine as the land he tamed. In 1932, during the darkest days of the Great Depression, he homesteaded our 240-acre ranch in Pine Ridge Valley. Picture a time when dust storms choked the plains, families scraped by on hope and grit, and survival demanded backbreaking labor. Ezra felled towering ponderosa pines right here on our property, hand-hewing beams with nothing but an adze, a chisel, and a stubborn will to build something lasting. He crafted mortise and tenon joints, each one a testament to precision and pride, locking together like the pieces of a puzzle meant to outlast empires. That red barn wasn't just a building. It was the heart of our family's endurance, sheltering cattle through dust bowls, World War II rationing, and droughts that drove neighboring ranches to ruin. When my father passed in 2019, he didn't just leave me land. He left a legacy woven into every creaking floorboard, every nail hammered by calloused hands, every whiff of leather tack and aged hay that filled the air with stories of survival. Fast forward to 2020, when the world turned upside down. The pandemic sent city folks scrambling for open spaces, and Pine Ridge Valley became their shiny new playground. Tech moguls lured by Zoom call backdrops of our snow-capped Mount Bar. Tanes descended like locusts with laptops. Luxury developments sprouted faster than weeds after a spring rain, none flashier than Willowbrook Estates, $2 million homes, a man-made lake, and a yacht club, because apparently Colorado's ranching soul wasn't complete without Silicon Valley boat parties. The newcomers formed an HOA quicker than you can say property values, stacking the board with transplants who'd never mucked a stall, branded a calf, or understood why a cow might graze near a creek bed. To them, us old-timers were relics, obstacles to their vision of a polished, gated paradise. The clash was inevitable, like a storm brewing on a clear summer day, and it arrived in the form of Priscilla Vanier, a 45-year-old former marketing VP from Palo Alto with a smile as sharp as a switchblade and a mission to elevate community standards. Priscilla swept into Pine Ridge like a corporate conquistador, securing the HOA presidency in just 6 months. Her weapon of choice? Certified mail violation notices, each one printed on letterhead fancier than my monthly feed bill, dripping with legal threats and condescending tone. Her vendetta against me started small. My cattle, grazing near her property line as they'd done for a century, were suddenly an affront to her manicured lawn. In Colorado, grazing rights are often tied to historical land use, a fact lost on someone who thought agriculture was an app. By March 2024, she upped the ante, sending a letter that hit like a punch to the gut. Paint my great-grandfather's barn beige to meet their architectural harmony standards, or face $500 daily fines. Beige? On a Depression-era icon built with blood and sweat? I fired back, "Ma'am, this barn predates your shopping malls." But Priscilla wasn't interested in history lessons. She escalated, filing a nuisance complaint with the county, her heels clicking on my gravel driveway all like a countdown to war. That's when I turned to my father's old cedar desk, its drawers stuffed with yellowed papers that smelled of time and determination. Who knew water law better than most judges? She found aerial photos from the 1950s showing our irrigation ditches, proving historical use. Then, a bombshell. A 1932 survey map showed our homestead extended 50 feet into Willowbrook's yacht club property. They'd built their dock on my land. I posted no trespassing signs along the true boundary, right through their dock, sparking outrage. Priscilla called it harassment, but Deputy Morgan confirmed my property lines. She offered $500,000 for my land, but I knew it was a bargain for control over their water. Then, she played dirty. A county inspector declared my barn an imminent collapse hazard with a 48-hour demolition order. Old-timer Frank Kowalski, a retired Army engineer, provided a structural report proving the barn's integrity. Maggie filed an emergency injunction, and Judge Harrison, a former rancher, granted it just in time. Priscilla didn't stop. She claimed the barn had asbestos threatening groundwater, but I found Ezra's 1943 journal in the loft, documenting its construction and urging family to stand strong. I digitized every family document, birth certificates, deeds, and that 1932 water rights certificate granting absolute discretion over Pine Creek's flow. Maggie confirmed I could legally shut off Willowbrook's water, no permits needed. The power was intoxicating but heavy. I gave Priscilla one last chance at Mel's diner, showing her the certificate. She laughed, calling it a pathetic extortion attempt, and vowed to bury me in legal fees. That was her fatal mistake. I assembled a team, Maggie for legal cover, Frank for dam mechanics, Betty Clearwater from the Pine Ridge Gazette for media, and hydrologist Tom Sakamoto for environmental credibility. Our plan? Gradually reduced dam flow from 850 to 200 gallons per minute during Willowbrook's Memorial Day regatta, letting physics deliver the message. When Scylla's son vandalized my barn. Security footage gave me leverage, but she filed harassment charges instead of backing down. At her community safety meeting, ranching families rallied, exposing her overreach. Channel 9 News aired a balanced story confirming my rights, and on regatta day, I turned the valve. Boats grounded, docks tilted, and Priscilla's panic was palpable. Confronted with my certificate, she caved, dropping all lawsuits and acknowledging my barn's historical status. The lake refilled, but the victory was sweeter than Grandma's apple pie. Priscilla moved back to California, and Frank became HOA president, creating a charter to protect historical properties. Betty and I launched the Pine Ridge Conservation Trust, preserving ranches statewide. The Ezra Thornwick Scholarship Fund now trains water rights experts, and my barn hosts historical tours, alive with children's laughter. Our case set precedents across the West, empowering ranchers against developers. The annual Pine Ridge Heritage Festival draws thousands, blending tradition with progress. Ezra's framed water rights certificate hangs in our trust office, a reminder the land remembers even when people forget. Drop your wildest HOA horror story in the comments. I read everyone. Smash subscribe for more tales of underdogs winning big. Imagine waking up to the gut-wrenching roar of bulldozers tearing into your family's century-old legacy, splintering history into dust before your eyes. That's exactly what happened to me. I'm Dale Thornwick, a fourth-generation rancher in Pine Ridge Valley, Colorado. And this is the wild, true story of how I took on a powerful HOA that thought they could erase my great-grandfather's 1932 barn with a single swipe of their entitled pens. They called it an eyesore, blocking their luxury resort views, but they didn't know my family held the key to their entire playground. The water rights to Pine Creek Dam, feeding their precious man-made lake. When I turned that valve, their yachts hit mud, their docks tilted, and their million-dollar dreams sank faster than a stone. Picture this: a serene Colorado morning shattered by the roar of bulldozers tearing into my great-grandfather's 1932 barn, splintering a century of family history into dust. I'm Dale Thornwick, a fourth-generation rancher in Pine Ridge Valley, and this is the story of how I turned the tables on a powerful HOA that thought they could erase my legacy. They called my barn an eyesore, blocking their luxury views, but they didn't know my family held the water rights to the dam feeding their resort lake. When I shut that valve, their million-dollar yachts ended up stranded in mud. This isn't just a tale of revenge. It's a lesson in Colorado water law, historical preservation, and standing up to entitled newcomers. If you've ever dealt with HOA overreach or bureaucratic bullies, buckle up, hit that like button, and let's dive into a story that'll keep you hooked. My great-grandfather, Ezra Thornwick, homesteaded our 240-acre ranch during the Great Depression, a time when survival meant grit and ingenuity. He built that red barn with hand-hewn ponderosa pine beams, carving mortise and tenon joints with nothing but an adze and stubborn determination. It wasn't just a barn, it was our family's anchor through Dust Bowls, World War II rationing, and droughts that crushed neighboring ranches. When my father passed in 2019, I inherited more than land. I inherited a legacy of leather tack, old hay, and creaking floorboards that told stories of resilience. But in 2020, the pandemic brought tech moguls and their Zoom call mountain backdrops to Pine Ridge Valley. Luxury developments like Willowbrook Estates sprouted, boasting $2 million homes, a man-made lake, and a yacht club, because nothing screams Colorado ranching like Silicon Valley boat parties. The newcomers formed an HOA faster than you can say property values, led by people who'd never seen a cow up close, let alone understand why it might graze near a creek. Enter Priscilla Van Eer, a 45-year-old ex-marketing VP from Palo Alto, who became HOA president with a mission to elevate visual standards. Her weapon? Certified mail violation notices with legal threats on letterhead fancier than my feed bills. Her grudge against me started when my cattle grazed near her property line, standard for a century, but an affront to her manicured lawn. In March 2024, she sent a letter demanding I paint my barn beige or face $500 daily fines. Beige? On a Depression-era icon? I told her, "Ma'am, this barn predates your shopping malls." She escalated, filing a nuisance complaint with the county. That's when I dug through Dad's old desk, finding yellowed homestead papers smelling of cedar. Hidden in them? Senior water rights to Pine Creek Dam, dated 1932. In Colorado, water law follows prior appropriation. First in time, first in right. Ezra's rights gave us absolute control over the dam that fed Willowbrook's Lake, meaning their entire $50 million resort depended on my family's water. The irony was sweeter than honey. I held the power to turn their lake into a creek bed, but I played it smart. Priscilla offered to sponsor a barn makeover, a clever ploy to strip its historical protection status. I countered, "Let me research complications," and spent hours at the Colorado State Archives. I learned structures over 50 years old can get interim protection, freezing changes for 18 months during evaluation. I filed an emergency application with photos of Ezra's hand-hewn beams, and the state fast-tracked it. Depression-era barns are rare as hen's teeth. When Priscilla's painting crew arrived, I handed her the protection notice. Her face drained faster than a broken dam, but she wasn't done. She hired a Denver water rights attorney, Marcus Blackwood, to challenge my rights, claiming non-beneficial use since I hadn't irrigated crops recently. Colorado's use-it-or-lose-it law meant I needed proof of continuous use. I hired Maggie Rodriguez, a local attorney tougher than rawhide.